Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Today, we have a workshop on the topic of nurturing the inner child and the art of reparenting. My name is Nilakshi Joshi. I'm your host for today. I'm also a psychologist at Mindtribe. Along with me, we also have Mehrush, who will be the co host for today. She'll be answering all your queries on the chat box. Mehrush, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Nilakshi. So, my name is Mehdosh, and I'm a trained psychologist at Mindtribe. So, before we begin, there are some ground rules. Uh, During the workshop, your mics and camera will be off throughout the workshop. And if you have any doubts or query, you can write it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and ask your query after the workshop, at the end of the workshop.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Mehrush. Yes, so as Mehrush was saying, we have some ground rules that we need to discuss before we start the workshop. And she covered most of it, but just to go through it again. The first one is not to unmute yourself mid presentation unless you have a question that you need to ask and you're given permission to do so. Please be careful to keep your audio and video off for a smooth presentation. Put all your questions in the chat box. It will be looked at actively either by me or by Mehrush. If you're facing any technical issues, you can let us know in the chat box. If my voice is not clear or you're not able to see the PPT, please let us know in the chat box. Pin the presentation to your screen, that will be more helpful. And all questions and feedback will be addressed towards the end of the workshop. So if I'm not able to take any of your questions during the workshop, please make a note of them. I will definitely get to it at the end. Also, we just wanted to let you know that the workshop is being recorded. Now, only the PPT and the audio is being recorded. None of your names or your comments in the chat box will be recorded. But if you do unmute yourself and speak, that audio will be in the presentation. The presentation will only be used for educational purposes and will only remain with Mindtribe. Legal notice, MindType has the intellectual property for this presentation. This presentation is a copyright of MindTribe. So any video recording of the presentation is not permitted, and taking photos of screens and screenshot is also not permitted. Again, if there is anything that you need to make a note of, you can do so by using a pen and paper, and we can get back to it. Okay, so now before we begin with the main presentation, I have a small quiz that I want to do with all of you. It's basically a checklist thing where you need to mark yourself for every statement that you think is true for you. So I have a list of statements, and every statement that you think applies to you, just give yourself 1 point. If it doesn't apply for you, you don't have to mark yourself. So, for example, the first statement is I have a deep feeling that something is wrong with me. If you identify with this sign, if this is something that you feel constantly, just mark yourself 1. So, in this way, we will go through a list, and then you can score it. So, we'll get to the scoring once you've seen all the statements. Is this clear? I would also love if everybody uses emojis as a as a way of participating in the presentation. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. So the first statement is I have a deep feeling that something is wrong with me. The second is that I'm a big people pleaser. Then I'm rebellious in nature. I feel alive when there is conflict. So only when there's conflict, I feel energized. Hoarder, somebody who is a hoarder has the inability to let go of possessions and people. This could be something as simple as a chocolate wrapper. I can't even throw that. Or there are so many photos in my camera roll, but I just can't bring myself to delete anything. So that is something that a hoarder does. Anxious in novel situations. Novel situations are new situations that you haven't faced before. So you feel very anxious in those situations. You are guilty about setting boundaries. So whenever you have to set boundaries, you feel guilty about it. And you are driven to be a super achiever. You have to excel. If you don't excel, you feel very bad. So you need to excel in everything. So out of these statements, how many ever statements you agree with, you just mark yourself 1 for that. All right, moving on. Striving towards perfectionism, you have to be a perfectionist, you have to do well in everything. Have problems in starting and finishing tasks. So, procrastination, just to start a task and to finish a task is a problem. Highly self critical, always criticizing whatever you do. You feel ashamed at expressing emotions. So, whenever I feel anger or sadness, I'm not able to express it because I feel ashamed. Feel ashamed by your body. There are insecurities that you have about your own body. There is a deep sense of mistrust about anyone else, so it's very hard for you to trust people. It's very hard for you to think that this person is well intentioned or they don't mean any harm. And there is a deep seated fear of abandonment. So now these were the 14 statements. You can look through this PPT again. Okay, now we'll go to scoring. I hope everybody has seen this. So we're going to scoring now. So this is the scoring range. Yes, thank you everybody for sharing your answers in the chat box. Anybody else who wants to do that can do that with us. So if it's between 0 to 4, that means you have a mildly wounded inner child. If it's between 5 to 7, that it's moderately wounded. And if it's from 8 to 14, that it means that the inner child is severely wounded. Now, what these scores mean is something that I will also discuss in detail as we discuss what is inner child and how these scores relate. So, I will say make a note of your scores, and when we discuss what mildly, moderately, and severely means, you can see if it relates well with you or not. Okay, moving forward. Now, the most, as we start and talk about inner child, what I want to know is what all of you think are the basic needs of a child. So, you can put the answers in the chat box. What are the basic needs of a child? What does a child need? Yes, Ananya, go ahead.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. For me, the answer of this question can vary from very simple things to very complex, even like as simple as giving the child some time, attention, love, and care, to some complex things as providing them a sense of security, a sense of relief during any kind of situation where they feel feared or that they are not protected. So this can range from simple things to very complex, but for me, it's like just the attention, the care, and the support primarily.
Yes, thank you so much for that answer. I think that
Thank you.
beautifully talks about the needs of a child. And everybody in the chat box, thank you so much for your active participation. Definitely, emotional security, care. I think all of you have the same understanding of what a child needs, to have love and stability, to have support, you have appreciation. Thank you so much. So, in this inner child presentation, we talk about the needs of a child in four parts. First, we talk about love. I think that is the most fundamental need for any human and especially for a child. So, this is their foundational need. It fosters a sense of belongingness, it fosters a sense of self worth and security for the child. So, when a child receives unconditional love, they feel valued and important. This sense of love builds their emotional resilience. This helps them develop a self concept which is positive. So, when I know that the love that is given to me, especially by my parents, who are my primary caregivers, right, is unconditional, I also feel like my self worth is high. I am important. My self confidence is high. But when I feel like that love is conditional, it only happens when I do certain things. Only when I act like this will they love me. Then obviously my self image deteriorates. I don't feel as confident in myself. So it's very important that the child is provided with unconditional love. Love is conveyed through a lot of different ways, especially in a parent child relationship. It is affection, attention is so important. If the child feels like you care about what they do, you're paying attention to them, you are interested in them, that is when their self image also develops well. constant care is important, like a lot of you mentioned, right? Constant care is important because the child doesn't have a very good sense of how to care for themselves, so it is important that they receive that. And then obviously, just all of this together forms the basis of a healthy emotional development. Second thing is acceptance. So acceptance means embracing the child for who they are, including their individuality, their emotions, whatever quirks they have. It's very important for us to realize that children also have individuality. They will have their own set of personality traits that they come up with. You know, somebody is more curious, somebody is more active in a sports event, maybe somebody is more musically inclined, somebody likes, maybe just have any small fascination with, somebody likes dinosaurs or somebody likes uh, coloring more. So they all have their individuality, and that is important for us to understand. It is important for even in our childhood, you know, it is important to think back, did we receive that acceptance from the people around us? When a child feels accepted, they embrace them their own authentic self. So when I feel like, okay, the people around me accept me for who I am, I will not feel embarrassed about myself, I will not feel shy, I will be more open, I will be more confident. This nurtures my confidence, this allows me to grow into a secure adult. So when I've received acceptance in childhood, even in my adulthood I believe that, okay, I'm secure in myself. So that is why I don't have to always try to get others acceptance. But when I don't receive that acceptance in childhood, in my adult life also I will always be trying to get that from somebody else. I will always be trying to get people to accept me without accepting my own self. That's why it's very important that children receive acceptance. The third is nurturance. Nurturance here is consistent attention and care. This helps the child's emotional and developmental needs. So, this also includes guidance, support, and encouragement. You know, you can't just scold a child and tell them that I am telling you that you have to do this, and only when you do this, I love you. Nurturance is not that. Nurturance is telling the child that this is why I want you to do this, encouraging them when they are doing something well, telling them that, you know, this is not something that you should be doing, but what is the alternative? So this will help the child, exactly like Shubham says, giving them guidance and direction. Nurturing nurturing parents and nurturing environment gives the child self confidence and a sense of safety, that I am safe in this place. So the child learns to trust others, the child feels supportive, and this again helps with their emotional and social development. And the last topic here that we discuss is protection. Protection is so important for a child's physical and emotional safety. This is not just physical protection, you know, this is not just protecting the child from physical harm, it is also protecting the child from emotional harm. So, when we have a secure environment, the child feels safe from both external dangers and also emotional threats. So, I might be safe in my house physically, maybe, but if there is constant emotional emotional abuse that I suffer, or constantly I'm put down, my emotional safety is not there, my emotional protection is not there. So it is important that the protection is in all aspects. When a child feels protected, they develop a sense of trust and a sense of security, which is vital for their ability to explore. When the child explores, they learn more things, they build better relationships. But if the child doesn't feel secure, the child doesn't feel protected, they will never explore. They will remain in the same bubble that they were in. You know, it will be very hard for them to try new things because they are scared. They were never given the protection to do that. So, you know, I want, as we discuss all of this, and especially as we are doing this workshop on inner child, I want all of us to think back to, did we feel like we were given love, acceptance, nurturance, protection, and how do we relate all of these things to our childhood and how we grew up? So, moving on, what is the inner child? What is the inner child actually? The inner child represents the childlike aspects within our unconscious mind. They are also called the subpersonality that holds memories, experiences, emotions that we have from our childhood years. So from our childhood years, whatever memories that I have, be it good, be it bad, whatever emotions that I experienced, there are primary emotions that I can remember. Somebody can remember having a very positive childhood, whereas somebody else could remember having a very difficult childhood where they had to struggle a lot. So what are the emotions that I remember from my childhood? It's a part of us that carries the joyful innocence that we had when we were children, as well as the pain that we had from the unmet needs. So my need for security was not met. So if that was the case, then the inner child in me still remembers that, I wasn't secure, I wasn't protected. The inner child remembers all of these things. So there are positive aspects like we discussed. There is innocence, there's creativity, there is joy. There's also negative aspects. There is unmet needs, there's repressed childhood emotions that we were never able to discuss. So, when we connect with our inner child in a positive way, we can experience freedom, we can experience optimism, the capacity to feel genuine excitement and joy. But when we think of the negative aspects, we think of, these repressed emotions that often manifest even in adult life as fears or insecurities. So even the fears that I might have right now, or the insecurities related to anything, it could be my body image, it could be my relationship with others, my issues with trust, all of them somewhere come from my childhood needs that were not met. So this inner child, this aspect of the inner child requires healing. It needs reparenting. It requires us to acknowledge and nurture and address the emotional wounds that we had and that we carried from an early childhood days. So the concept of inner child helps us understand how basically our childhood experience shapes our adult behavior, emotions, and relationships, and how they provide a pathway towards deeper self understanding and healing. Through this, workshop, and when we discuss inner child, it is to see how our understanding of our needs gets better, and how maybe then we move towards a path of healing. So identifying your inner child. But before I go to this, I also wanted to discuss, the scores that we talked about, and we talked about the mildly wounded inner child. So when we talk about the mildly wounded inner child, it's somebody who experiences. I'm sure you guys remember your score. So when I talk about the first score, that is mildly wounded, it is somebody who experiences occasional self-doubt, occasional anxiety, and moments of insecurity. So these individuals might have grown up in a fairly supportive environment, but there might be a few incidences of criticism, neglect. So in some situations, they might struggle with certain things, but they overall have a positive image. Now, somebody who has a moderately wounded inner child, the scoring criteria, if it is moderately wounded, then there are deeper emotional wounds. They experienced consistent criticism, neglect when they were growing up, and this results to chronic feelings of inadequacy. I feel like I will never be enough. There's fear of rejection, there is sabotage patterns. So I myself try to sabotage myself. People with moderately wounded inner child have trouble with forming secure attachment. They have low self esteem and they can struggle with anxiety and depression. So, here healing is more important. It requires more intentional reparenting that focuses on boundaries, self soothing, and addressing negative self talk. Now, if somebody has a severely wounded inner child, in the scoring, I'm sure you can see your scoring. If it is severely wounded, then that means there is significant trauma in the childhood. There could be neglect in the childhood. The level of wound is, it's related to feeling unworthy. Somebody feels like they're not worthy of any love. Somebody feels there's a lot of mistrust in relationships. It's very hard for them to trust somebody, and there might be emotional dysregulation. The individual might also experience maybe fear, shame, and they sometimes develop maladaptive coping mechanisms. So there's a lot of people pleasing. So healing a severely wounded inner child is very important. It requires a more structured approach. It can be done through both, going for therapy is always a good option, or also looking at ways of self reparenting the child. So these were the scoring criteria. I hope that was clear. Now, moving forward, the three identifying the inner child. Now, there are three types of inner child that we can see. The first is the abandoned child. The abandoned child often feels unworthy, they feel unwanted, or they feel deeply lonely. They experience a lot of neglect and emotional absence or lack of consistent care. So, even if care was there, it was not consistent. Sometimes my parents or my caregivers are present, but sometimes when I need them, they're not there. So, I'm never sure if I will get the support that I need. So in adulthood, these people, the person who was an abandoned child might develop a fear of rejection. They might have difficulty in trusting others, and they also need constant validation. And they also have a fear of being alone because of the abandoned inner child. The second is the playful child. Now, the playful child has a lot of innocence, they have curiosity, they have creativity. This is the inner child that thrives on fun. There is exploration, there is joy. This person is well natured, playful, they have hobbies. However, if this child is suppressed, so a lot of times in adulthood, we try to suppress the playful child. We think that the playful child shouldn't come out. The playful child should always be inside because now I'm an adult. But the playful child is there, and the playful child needs to be expressed in some form. So, if there is a hobby that you really like, you need to participate in that hobby just to give that child the satisfaction. And it is also good for you. So obviously this is all a part of yourself. So when you participate in that hobby, when you do those things that gave you joy as a child, it will also give you joy now. And the third is the fearful child. So the fearful child is often rooted in past experiences of trauma, unpredictability, and strict control. So this child is very fearful of being unsafe, of being there is constant anxiety for them. And in adulthood, how the fearful child manifests is there is a lot of avoidance. There is need for control in every situation because they are fearful that they can't control something. They will always try to control everything around them. That is how fear manifests. If I can control everything around me, then I will not feel this anxious. But even after controlling so many things, they will still feel anxious. Somebody who is overly cautious, somebody who frequently worries about the worst case scenario, they might be reacting from a fearful inner child. So their inner child can be very fearful. So what happens is when we understand these aspects of the inner child, it helps us recognize which inner child is influencing us more. So when we see abandoned, playful, fearful, I will understand, okay, for me, the abandoned child is maybe more, or for maybe somebody else, the fearful child is present more. And when we see how that affects us as adults, it then helps us understand, okay, how can I care for this child in a better way? How can I care for this child in a more loving way? Uh, yes. So I think the question is having all three in different levels. Yes, you can have all three in different levels. You can have a more playful child, but there can be feelings of abandoned child and fearful child also. Or you can have a very fearful child, but of course, there is still playful aspects. So it's not just, oh, I only have one. It is which is more dominant and which is more present. Okay, Pragya says, can you specify the age range when such feelings set in a child? So, Pragya, are you asking when the inner child develops or when the feelings of abandonment and insecurity develops? If you're saying when the inner child develops, then the inner child is present as we grow up and we become more we start suppressing. So what happens is once you move from your ages of 10 to 12 and you start entering pre-teens and later teenage years, you start suppressing the inner child because now you're moving towards adulthood. You're told to control your emotions better, you're told to have a more realistic picture of the world. So in all of this, the child in you suppresses. So getting in touch with the inner child at a later stage is very important, because if these suppressed needs are never met, then you're never able to deal with the consequences. Couple says that, I scored 8 but I don't have trust issues. See, obviously not every aspect of it applies to everybody. We are all individuals and we have such individual personalities, right? So when we discuss this presentation, and if there's something that doesn't align with you, it could be possible, very true, but it could be that somebody else relates to it. So in an overall, this is what the characteristic feature looks like, but if it doesn't apply to you, I understand that. Okay, so moving on, how it should be in our childhood, how should the parenting look like? In an ideal situation we have self actualized parents. So what are self actualized parents? These are parents that are emotionally mature and they have a confident sense of self. They have a deep understanding of their own values and purpose, and they don't have unresolved issues, and they are capable for providing stable unconditional love. But now this seems like a very movie set of parents where they have no issues of their own and they are very loving, and they understand everything. But obviously in reality that is not possible. We understand that our parents also come from situations where they have a lot of unresolved issues that they have not worked through. Especially when we enter adulthoods, we realize that they might have past traumas that we've never known about, and they don't, and all of this also influences how they parent us. So the issues that they grew up with in their childhood influences how they parent us when we are children. Then the second ideal scenario would be that the parents are aware of their thoughts, values, and actions. They know how it influences parenting. They are very mindful. They are intentional to how they respond to the child's needs. But again, this is not always possible. The parent is not always intentional. They are not always mindful. There are so many instances where your parent might just shout at you for no fault of your own, for you feel like I didn't even do anything, why are you saying something to me? But that has happened so many times because they are not aware of the things that they are doing, because they have things going on, they don't realize how it impacts the child. And the last is appropriate values of their child as an individual. Now in a ideal situation, parents will realize that their children are also individual. They are not an extension of them. But I think, especially in the Indian society, in a culture like ours, children are expected to be an extension of their parents. They are expected to follow whatever their parents are doing, believe in whatever their parents are doing, act however their parents are acting. But then what does that do? That kind of suppresses the individuality that the child has, the uniqueness that the child has. This leads to a lower sense of self confidence in the child, because when I'm always doing whatever my parents wanted me to do, I am never able to discover what I want, how I can do those things. So this is obviously very ideal that my parents realize that I'm an individual, my parents have their issues solved, they are aware of their values. But in reality it doesn't really work like that, right? We come from families where obviously there is trauma that my parents have gone through, and that is how it influences the upbringing that I go through. So let's look at how it actually works in reality. In reality, society does not teach about social conscious awareness. Conscious awareness is being aware of what is going on with me, being aware of the way my childhood influences me. So when people become parents for the first time, they are inexperienced. They don't know how their identity is influenced by that of their own parents' identity. I have realized, especially now that I am growing older, so many of my personality traits come from my parents. Yes, Ananya, I'll just finish this and I will go back to the previous slide. Thank you. So, yes, so as I was saying, I have realized as I have grown older that so many of my personality traits come from my parents, right? So much of what I do comes from my parent, and I didn't even realize when I was growing up. And I'm sure all of you can identify so many of the things that you do that come from your own parents. So unconscious parents, parents who are not aware that they are still acting in the way that is hurtful to their child, cause harm unintentionally. I think on a majority, parents are not trying to harm their child. They don't think that the way they are upbringing their child is going to have a long lasting impact on their emotional self, but that does happen. So the wounded spaces of unprocessed emotions in their child. So what happens is the unintentional harm to the child by placing maybe large expectations on the child, not allowing the child to have their own unique personalities, not have their own conscious awareness. All of this leads to intergenerational trauma that is passed from my grandparents to my parents to me and maybe to my own children. If I don't identify it, if I don't realize that this is a pattern in my family, maybe we have always seen parents who are very strict and who tell their children, you have to do this because I said so. And that has happened with my parents, my parents, with me, and maybe unknowingly I will do it to my children. I will not realize that I'm repeating the same thing, but unless we realize the generational trauma, it's never going to change. It keeps repeating in cycles. So, this is how parenting actually works. Now, what is reparenting? We obviously went through parenting when we were children, you know, uh, our parents were there, they took care of us. But reparenting is something that we have to do. So, what is reparenting? And it's a very good quote. We can only give others what we practice giving ourselves. So, only when I reparent myself in a way will I be able to give it to my children or to anybody else where, I'm parenting them in a way. So, reparenting is the process of grieving for the past self and being compassionate towards newer adapting self. Grieving for the past self means to go back to your childhood and think of how you were then. What were the unmet needs then? What were the things that you struggled with then? So, you grieve for that. You feel bad for that child. You say that, okay, that was difficult. I acknowledge that that was difficult. I will not suppress my emotions anymore, and I am now compassionate to the new self. So I tell the new self that I understand where these emotions are coming from. I understand why you're always angry. Because in the childhood, something constantly happened that made you angry, but you were never able to express it. So now I'm compassionate. I understand where this emotion is coming from. It provides yourself with, nurturance, guidance, emotional care that you have to give yourself now that was maybe not present during your childhood. So it is consciously meeting the unmet needs that were in the childhood and healing wounds by offering yourself support. This is all about being there for your own self, providing your own self with support, love, and care like a parent would. So I talk to my own inner child in a way that a parent would. So, through practices like self compassion, by setting healthy boundaries, by soothing my inner child, reparenting helps me rewrite old narratives. So, if I've always been told that you're a very angry person and you will remain like this, reparenting helps me change that. Reparenting helps me become a more calmer person, be at more peace with myself. It develops a healthier sense of self, leading to emotional growth and healing. So, as we move forward in the presentation, we're also going to look at ways that we can reparent ourselves. How can we actually bring about the changes that we are talking about here? So, now a small case study. I want all of you to, pay attention to the case study. Think of what is being discussed here and then answer the questions that are given. So let's say Anish, this is the case of Anish, Ashish, and he's gone to a therapist. He's told the therapist that, I think I have a split personality. I behave in one particular way someday and then my reaction changes other times. So it's pretty irrational. I keep changing my reaction. And the therapist says, what makes you say that these are irrational reactions? Could you give me an example? So now the therapist is asking for an example, and the client says that, yeah, I guess. So one day I was helping my wife shift the sofa from one corner of the room to another. And I was kind of placed in the part of the room where she didn't want it to be in the first place. So she shouted at me, and she didn't shout at all, but just told me that you have to place the sofa a bit off the place from the ideal position. I don't know why, but I started to yell at her at the top of my voice. She must have felt that I was being so irrational. So, has everybody read this slide? I'll move to the other slide. Give me a thumbs up. Yes, Ocean, go ahead.
Forgive me, please, by mistake.
No, no, no problem. All right, the next slide. So the therapist says, yeah, I understand that she must have thought it was strange, but I wish to know, is there something that was even minutely triggering about the incident? Something related to the childhood. So then now the therapist is connecting this to the client's childhood. So the client says, I don't know, maybe. I just remember that I was always criticized about almost every single thing that I did. And the therapist says, okay, how did that make you feel? And the client says, hurt, I guess, but I usually used to throw tantrums instead of putting my pain across because I know nobody would understand it. So overall, we understand that the client, felt like he was triggered by a very small incident and he started shouting at his wife. He didn't have to. And he feels bad about it. So he's talking to the therapist, and the therapist is trying to connect it to the childhood. Has everybody read this slide? Great. Thank you. So now you all be the therapist. You tell me, one, what do you think has triggered the reaction by the client that he couldn't control his anger? And also, can you identify the type of inner child based on the three categories we mentioned before? So we know that he, in his childhood, always felt like he was not being listened to. So, what is the category of the inner child, and what do you think triggered him? If somebody wants to give their answer, they can raise their hand and do so, or you can put it in the chat box. Yes, Ananya.
Ma'am, to answer the first question, the statement alone that you should have just positioned it a little bit off on this side or that, like any kind of comment telling him that he did something wrong with what he was doing, although his intention was really just to help his wife, can put him off and trigger him because for him the intention was to help, and instead of getting appreciation for helping and lending a hand, he just got it was not criticism because the wife's voice not was not aggravated, or she was mild in telling him so, but still somehow he felt that instead of appreciation and acceptance, all he got was criticism. So this could be the reason that he would would not be able to control his anger and the outburst.
Yes, definitely. Sure. Thank you for sharing that. So, what type of
Yeah.
inner child do you want to talk about that also? What type of inner
Uh,
child do you think that belongs to?
like it could be from I think it could be a sign of abandoned child, like he was not getting the attention or the appreciation or the positive feedback or the positive reinforcement that he wished he could have been provided during his earlier childhood days.
Yes, true. Okay, Pragya, you raise your hand. What do you think it is?
To answer that first question, it's not about the tone or the way because he himself mentioned that the wife was very polite and she wasn't arguing with him or scolded him. But what he may have felt triggered by is the criticism because, like he said, he was helping her, but in his childhood, he was always criticized no matter what he did. So that kind of maybe triggered the feeling of not being good enough, which answers the second question that it maybe comes from his abandoned child, inner child, that feels that whatever he does is not good enough, or he's not worthy, or he's not appreciated and acknowledged for what he's doing.
Yes, thank you. Makes a lot of sense. And I think in the comments also, everybody has said that, There's suppressed emotions, it is the abandoned child, and there's elements of fear also, yes. And maybe scared of messing up, true. So yes, so thank you everybody for answering that and participating. I also think that first, there is the fact that it's not exactly what the wife said. It is not the reaction that was brought on by the wife or what the wife said, but it is linked to the childhood of the client, where they have always constantly felt like they're criticized. Anything that they do is not good enough. So that got linked to what the wife was saying, and that brought about a reaction. So this is also, uh, like everybody mentioned, it is abandoned child, where anything that I do is not enough. Anything that any effort that I put in will never be acknowledged. So they feel that this is also fearful child, because there is a fear of criticism. So I would say, it doesn't have to be just one. There is mixture of both, where there is fear that somebody is critical on me, and when there is fear, the response is not always sadness. The response can sometimes also be lashing out on the other person, because the client did mention that I was never able to put my pain across, I was never able to express my emotions, I would always throw tantrums. So the way the child has dealt with this from the start is to throw a tantrum or maybe get angry. So even in their adult life, the only thing they know how to do is to get angry, instead of maybe even putting into words how they felt, that, oh, I still did this for you, you could have just appreciated it. Instead of being able to say that, the only thing they know is how to get angry. So it is important that we realize this, we see this in ourselves, and we process it. So thank you everybody for participating, that was great. Now let's look at the relationship between the past experiences and the present reactions. So there is overreactions. So let's take an incident like with the client. There was an overreaction. They didn't have to react like this when the wife said that. But where is this coming from? This is coming from the past pain rather than present reality. We all know that it wasn't actually the wife who said anything that caused that reaction, but the past that brought about this. There is also seemingly irrational emotion. So when the anger is so much, it seems irrational because it is not proportionate to the situation. When an emotion is proportionate to the situation, then we don't say it is irrational. But if it is not proportionate, it is maybe too much, then it is irrational. So there could be embarrassment, hurt, anger, shame, even crying, that the person themselves, that I myself think that, oh, why did I do that, why did I cry like that, or why did I get angry like that, I shouldn't, it wasn't even that bad. So it is confusing to others and myself. I am also confused why I reacted like that. The other person is also confused that, oh, but I didn't even say something that bad. Why did you feel so bad? And what happens because of this is there is an increased sense of shame and isolation. That I only feel ashamed of my reactions, so I again keep suppressing it, and I keep isolating myself from people, or I keep isolating myself from my own needs and my own emotions. So this is how the pattern goes. There is an overreaction, there is a uh, emotion that I feel is not proportionate, that is confusing to myself and to others, and that just leads to more shame and isolation. But it is important that we break this cycle. Yes, Ananya.
Ma'am, I just have a quick question about this. What if instead of this, like imagining myself in the similar situation, instead of this, I ask the person that you could have just appreciated the effort or anything like that, and even after that, the person, there can be two cases. Either the person denies that, oh, what is there to appreciate about, and second be the case where the person actually appreciates us. And in both cases, I don't know, somehow I imagine myself and I felt that, in the second case also, even after the person appreciate us of what we are contributing into or helping out in, I don't feel valued enough. Like it feels more like, okay, I asked for appreciation, that's why I got it. That appreciation was not purely intentional or like it was subjective. Like when I asked for it, that's when I got it. But if I wasn't asking for it, I didn't. So what can be done in that situation? Even after like finding a constructive solution to that, I am not feeling content that okay, like I'm not able to heal that part of me, or that part of abandoned or feared part of the childhood.
Yes, and that happens to a lot of us. I will agree, and a lot of times in relationships also. But I think there also it's important to ask our own self, why is it so hard for me to believe that this person actually values me? Where is that also coming from? Is it coming from the way that I see my own self, or like you said, I don't like the fact that I asked for it, so you gave me that compliment, because if I had to ask for it, is it even genuine? But a lot of times in relationships, if I don't ask, the person never knows that these are my needs, and I keep silently cursing them, or I keep silently thinking that, oh, they never say the things I want to say, but maybe I've never told them the things I want to hear. Of course, I'm not saying all compliments should be first asked and then received, of course not, but especially in the start, it is very good to communicate that, hey, this is how I liked to be appreciated, because the other person is a completely different individual in a completely different setting. Maybe they don't even know those are your needs. So I think knowing that, understanding that they are very different from who I am, and in the start helping them realize that these are the things I like. And I'm sure if they are also genuinely in that connection, in that relationship, or in this case, the client's wife is also genuinely understanding of them, caring of them, they will bring about that change in themselves. I think that is my understanding of it.
Okay,
So I
thank you.
I'm so grateful for all your questions, and Shri, I would take it, but at the end, because we're kind of running out of time. So anybody who has a question, once the presentation is done, stay back. I will answer those. Even if you have some slide you want to go back to, I will do that. But once I'm done with the presentation, thank you. So it is important to understand that these unhealed wounds, they can be jabbed, poked, and bruised again by current events. So anytime something happens, it might trigger a very old childhood wound that you don't even remember the full extent of it, but your body and your mind remembers the hurt, and then that brings about an emotional reaction. So it's not that, oh, that happened, so it's such long time back in the past, why should it affect me now? But it does affect you now, because it has never been resolved. And a lot of times clients or individuals tend to hate the wounded child, even though the wounded child needs what every child needs, like we talked about: love, care, nurture, protection. So a lot of times we still hate the wounded child. We think to ourselves, why do I still care about these things? Why am I able to not let go? We put so much pressure on ourselves to just let it be. That happened in the past. I was a child. I have a different life now. I should be able to move past. And we hate ourselves for not being able to. We criticize ourselves for still reacting, but the criticism is not what is needed. What is needed is love, acceptance, nurturance, and protection. When we give ourselves all of this, we will definitely be able to move past it. So now look at the metaphors that we have in inner child. So we have the adult part, the part of the brain that is rational, which is in the present moment, which thinks, which sees what is right, what is wrong, right? That is the adult of us. The wounded child is the unhealed emotional wounds that we have from our childhood, and in the present also, that they keep coming up. Now we also have a parent in us. The parent could be, for example, if you go to a therapist, the parent is the therapist. Or I myself can be the parent who gives the right response to the child that the child should have received. So when my wounded child needs something, when my wounded child needs care, but I'm not able to do that, I'm just criticizing it, it's not going to help. So I can be the parent and tell the wounded child, hey, I know you felt bad in this situation, I know we reacted like this, but that is okay, this comes from the past, we will do better next time. Of course, the response is not to just self-soothe and never change. There has to be change, but there has to be change with compassion. If I'm compassionate to myself, it will be easier for me to bring about change. So what does inner child therapy, especially when you go to a therapist, what does that involve? So the first is how to reparent the wounded child. We learn how to actually reparent the wounded child. Setting limits with knee jerk reactions. So, these things that trigger us so easily, we set limits for that. We try to increase our tolerance for these things. We need to recognize when the wounded child is being triggered, when is it actually causing the trigger, what is actually causing the trigger, and how to control these reactions. Coaching the adult to get back in charge. So, we studied that we have an adult, we have a wounded child, and a parent. So we need to coach the adult to get back in charge instead of the wounded child, because the adult is more rational, and in situations we need the adult to take over. So it is important. And then it's also important to have a nurturing parental voice to help your wounded inner child to grow, which is what the inner child needs the most. It is so important to have that voice of care that you wanted when you were younger. Be that for yourself, talk to yourself kindly. I think a lot of times, so many of us are so harsh. Yes, Pragya, so I'll elaborate. A lot of times, so many of us are so harsh to our own selves. We are the most critical of our own selves. We are so easy to forgive somebody else who makes a mistake, or somebody else who mistreats us. But if I make the smallest mistake, I will call myself dumb. I will say, you are so stupid, how can you even do something like this? So where is the compassion for yourself? Now imagine yourself talking to a 5-year-old child. Will you still use the same language? Will you still look at the child and say, you are so dumb, how could you do something like this? No, right? You have a more parental voice, you have a more nurturing voice of, oh, you did this. Okay, it's the best thing to do, but it's okay. I see that you are regretful. I see that you feel bad about it. There are so many chances in the future to change it. So developing that caring voice for your own self is very important. Is that clear to everybody? All right, thank you. Now let's look at self parenting. What is self parenting? So, self parenting focuses on the individual strength and what we can do to heal our younger self. So, now for example, maybe my strength is my empathy. I am a very empathetic person. So, it shouldn't just be for others, it should be for my own self also. Maybe my strength is being very resilient. I'm very resilient. Any situation that comes, I'm able to overcome that. So, using that resilience to again reparent myself, telling my childhood self that this is also something we can overcome. It doesn't mean that you're replacing your parents, it doesn't mean that you're changing the care that was given by them, but it's only learning how to self soothe yourself, how to better parent yourself now as an adult. This is obviously not a replacement for whatever parenting I got in the childhood, of course not. But the unmet needs that were there, I learn how to parent myself for that. So there are 4 pillars of reparenting. Okay, let's see discipline. There is discipline, which is very important. So you have rituals and habits. You have rituals where you establish a routine that promotes stability and structure. It is very important to have a routine. A routine will give you more sense of security. A routine will give you better stability. That's why we need discipline and having a routine. We also need to make promises to self. That means commitments that we give to ourselves that we keep. What happens is, when I commit to myself that, every day from today I will go on a walk for maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes, because I need to make sure that I step out of the house. That's a promise to myself. And when I keep that promise every day, I have better faith in myself, and that is very important. So this is discipline. Then we have self care. Self care is very important. So, self care, sleep, you need to prioritize your sleep. You need to have a good sleeping schedule. Only, we think that it's not that important, but all of this plays such a big role in our mood and how we react throughout the day. So, taking care of your sleep, getting enough rest, nutrition, having a balanced diet, of feeding yourself a balanced meal. This helps with your energy, this helps with your health, and again with your overall mood. And some movement is very important. I think it's very important that we all in any form that we like. It could be yoga, it could be walking, cycling, going to the gym, any kind of movement that you like, that is possible for you, where you have the resources to do it, because it is important for your body. It helps with your overall well-being. And connection with nature. Spending time in nature, brings about relaxation. It gives us inner peace. So whenever possible, for however long possible, do try to connect with nature more. Now, joy. Play obviously, as an adult, we think we don't have time for play, but play is also very important for us. When I say play, I mean, have fun activities planned for yourself. It could be anything that you like. If it is, playing some sport, playing badminton, playing basketball, cricket, whatever, it could be that, or it could be playing chess or indoor games, or just drawing, even if you like needling, crocheting, whatever is play for you, whatever is fun for you, do that. Something that brings you joy. The same with interest and hobbies. If you like cooking, if you like gardening, if you like watching something on TV, that is also okay. Whatever is your interest, whatever is your hobby, if it's reading, engage in all of that. And having the human connection. We are all social beings. We are all beings that need to be in touch with other people. So having those connections with the people around us is very important. It helps us share the joy that we experience in our lives. It helps increase the joy that we are feeling. So I hope that we all get to do that. Even coming for a workshop like this, talking to all of you, and all of you coming together, that is also social connection and human connection, and I'm glad we're able to do that in this setting. Then we have emotional regulation. So there's meditation. Practicing mindfulness is great, even if you do it for like 10 minutes every day, if you're able to. And there are so many guided meditations on YouTube, even on the Mind Tribe website, the YouTube page, we have guided meditations. So if you're able to do that, that is great. It helps you keep your mind calm. Conscious awareness. So developing awareness of your own thoughts and emotions, understanding your own self a little bit better. And I think meditation again is a very good way to do that, getting in touch with your own emotions. And breath work, using intentional breathing techniques. So taking deep breaths, concentrating on these breaths, focusing on them, helps with emotional balance, again helps with bringing about a more peaceful and calm mind. So these are the four broad ways that we can reparent ourselves. And ways to connect with your inner child. So there's dialoguing with the inner child, that basically means talking to the inner child, keeping in touch with the inner child, and just understanding what the inner child needs are. This doesn't even have to be a loud conversation that you're having with yourself. It could just be in your mind. Oh, I think right now I need this. And acknowledging that, doing that. Journaling the inner child's voice. So, for example, looking at a childhood photo of yourself and journal what it was like to be at that age. So, look at a photo of yourself from when you were 10 years old. What do you remember? What were the emotions that you were experiencing then? What was it like to be that old for you then? Write all those feelings, and I think we'll realize that it brings up so many different emotions that we didn't even realize. Once you start writing it down, once you start remembering, oh, this is what I felt, these are the positives that I experience, and these are the negative that I experience, it helps you understand yourself as a person better. Talking to a therapist within the child's voice. So talking to a therapist with the, so when I telling my therapist that when I was 10 years old, this is how it felt, that could be a very good way in therapy to, for you and your therapist to understand you better. Meditation, I think, we talked about this before. Writing a letter to a parent, speaking all of your truths and not sending it. Now, this is a very important technique that we use in inner child therapy. We write a letter to the parent when we talk about all the things that we feel towards them, positive, negative, the hurt that we feel, the guilt that we feel, anything. But you don't have to send it. It's a way of catharsis, it's a way of letting it all out. without actually also causing any maybe discomfort or any hurt in the parental relationship. There are so many things that I want to say, but I don't actually think it's going to benefit them or me, or not bringing about any change. But does that mean I should keep it suppressed? No, I can still let it out, write it down on paper, and then uh, and then at least for my own self I will feel like I've let it out. So, working with a pillow, a doll, or a stuffed toy as a representation of your inner child. Now, this all might seem a little childish. It might seem like, why do I have to do this? But even being childish is not a bad thing. So, having a pillow and a doll and thinking that, hey, okay, if I'm having a dialogue with my inner child, talking to that doll and saying that it's okay. It's okay if you feel hurt. It's okay if you feel bad. Practicing your parental voice, I think this is a very good way of doing that. Engage in play or activity you truly loved as a child. So if somebody has, I'm sure all of you have hobbies or things that you like doing as a child. It could even be, I have a stamp collection that I liked, or I just liked watching this particular cartoon, or I used to love playing with my friends. I used to go for basketball every day, something like that. So doing that again as an adult can bring about the joy that you felt in your childhood. Resourcing to figure out what people, places, and things that we can use to calm down our system. So, we all have those particular places where we feel safe. We have particular people, even if it's a very few people, even if it's that one person that we feel comfortable with. We have things that bring us joy. It could be something that we bought with our own money, or it could be something that was gifted to us that has a lot of value. So, keeping all of these things together so that whenever needed, whenever I need comfort, my inner child needs comfort, it's around us. And again, all the questions I will take them up at the end. Thank you so much. Okay, so a small break. I know we are running out of time. So, this break is basically about Mind Tribe and the counseling that we provide. So, first, what is one on one counseling? One on one counseling is personalized, confidential sessions between a client and a trained therapist. So, for example, I'm a trained therapist at Mind Tribe. Now, if you come for a counseling session, anything that you share with me remains confidential. It is based on your needs. We look at personal growth for your own thoughts, behaviors, emotions. We also try to do problem solving, see what are the specific issues that you're dealing with. If it's related to the inner child, then we deal with issues related to the inner child. We see what is causing stress and anxiety, or if there is any relationship problems. And then slowly through the therapeutic process, we do goal setting. So, goal setting, personal or professional goals that we set with the counselor. Now I know there are misconceptions about counseling. We are all a little hesitant about counseling because it feels like counseling is for people who are really sick, or something has to be really wrong with them. That is what society makes us feel. But for truly, counseling is for anybody who wants to be a better version or the best version of themselves. So it helps us with building better relationships. It helps us with emotional regulation, academic success, and career advancement. Now, for everybody who wants to avail counseling practices, we will send on the group, on the Inner Child WhatsApp group, we will send the Mind Tribe link, we will send our links. If you have any doubts, you can ask us about them there, and you can also go to the Mind Tribe website and look at our counseling services. Okay, so this was it for the counseling break. Now, this is the last part. This is just about tips to reparent your inner child. So I know the thing that we discussed before also, just to breathe. So yes, this is a step. It is very easy to feel overwhelmed, to feel like nothing is going right. I just don't know what to do with my life. But reparenting is a process. It will take some time for you to feel like counseling is also a process. Reparenting is also a process. It does take time. It's not something that happens overnight. I know we wish it would. I know there was some shortcut that we could take, but think about it. You have experienced these emotions since you were a child. They can't disappear overnight, right? So it takes some time, and it might not happen for a few weeks, it might not happen for a few months, but if you are consistent, it will happen. However, if you try to do too much at the same time, if you put a lot of pressure on yourself that, oh, I have to do this, I have to reprocess, I have to get better, it might feel very burdening. So it's always important to take a step back, breathe, take deep breaths, tell yourself it is okay to take it slow. Slow and steady wins the race, right? So take it slow, take your time, and do better. Keep at least one promise to yourself every day. I really like this step. It's basically, it seems small, but what you have to do in this step is you need to choose something that, in a situation that you know you will be successful at. So for example, every day I promise myself that I will do yoga for 10 minutes every day. This is my promise to myself. Now I know myself, I know my schedule, I know this is something I can do. It's not too hard for me. Only make promises that you know you can do well. If you're somebody who cannot get up early in the morning, you know your schedule is that you come home very late and you sleep at 3 a.m., then it's not possible for you to get up at 7 a.m. So that is not a promise that you should be making. Make promises that you know you can keep, and do those. When once you keep following with those promises, right, you will also feel so better about yourself. You will feel like I'm achieving something every day. So it could be like, oh, I will meditate for 2 minutes every day, or I will go for a 5 minute walk every day, or every day I will read something for 10 minutes, read a few pages every day before bed. So in the start, have a goal that is from not more than 10 minutes. It's a shorter goal, it's only a 10-minute goal, and then you can increase it later. Tell someone that you trust that you're beginning this process other than your parents. So why we do not share this with our parents is because sometimes it can be unnecessary, because they might oppose the idea, they might not like the idea, and sometimes it can also cause them a lot of hurt that maybe I don't want them to feel. Maybe I don't want them to feel this because I feel like it's not going to make anything better. Of course, if you think it will, then that is different. That is something that you need to think of, and think of the consequences, and maybe if you have a therapist, discuss with them. But it's also important that you tell this to somebody else that you trust. So it could be your partner, it could be your friend, it could be anybody around that you are close enough to, so that they will support you in this journey, because this journey does take a lot of support. Use a mantra. A mantra could be anything. So for example, if my mantra is, what can I give myself right now? If I feel very sad, I feel like I have no, so there are some days where you just don't feel optimistic, you feel like everything is going wrong. I really don't know where my life is going. So I just say, what can I give myself right now? So right now, if it's also just an ice cream, I will give myself that ice cream. Nothing is small, nothing is too small, nothing is, even if it brings you a little bit of joy, it's okay to do just that. If right now all that I can do is lie in my bed, then lie in your bed. That is okay. Be compassionate, give yourself that, because keep thinking about the same thing is not going to help. Keep pondering over the failure that may have happened or the work that didn't go well is really not going to change the situation. So what can I do for myself right now? Think of that and do that. Celebrate when you show up. This is the last point. I think this is the most important point. uh, we are all individuals, we are all unique individuals, and we all have our own unique set of challenges. So when you show up for yourself, when you do something that you did for your own good, celebrate that. Be proud of yourself. How hard it is for us to tell ourselves that I'm proud of me. Really, because we've not heard that enough growing up. I've not heard that enough from my parents, I've not heard that enough from people around me. So I just don't know how to say it to myself, but I should be able to look myself in the mirror and say, hey, I'm proud that you were able to do this, I am proud that you were able to achieve this. No matter how small, it could be an assignment that I had to submit, okay, but I did it, so I'm proud of myself. So celebrate yourself whenever you show up, because when you do that, you will want to show up more. You will want to do more good things because you appreciate it. Even when others don't appreciate yourself, appreciate your own effort. So yes, so that was it for the workshop today. Thank you so much for everybody that stayed back. I will take your all your questions now. So anybody who has a question can stay back. Everybody else, if they wish to leave, can do so. Yes, Ananya, go ahead.
Ma'am, my question is that even if we understand and try to know and identify what is causing the triggers, what experiences or the traumas and everything, can't it be in the long run, it can't it be self-sabotaging? Like if something happened and not even identifying that the other person is also at some place at fault and just telling ourselves, oh, this is because of my unhealed inner child trauma, or this is because of something that happened in my childhood or any experience that I had. So always isn't it an indirect way to always put the blame on self, and in the long run can it cause a negative impact? Like we are just overlooking that yes, someone else also did something that triggered us.
Oh no, so definitely this is not negating the other person's part in the situation. Not doing that at all. I would to say in inner child we also look at how I'm taking all the blame on myself and why am I doing that. Maybe my child has always grown up doing that. Maybe in childhood also I would take all the blame on myself. So why am I doing that? Inner child is just understanding what are the unmet needs that I had, what were the emotions that I am suppressing, and how do I process them now as an adult better, because these emotions might come out in situations where they don't have to. That is important, realizing that the emotions when they're coming out, when we discuss, they're not proportionate to the situation, only then. But if it is a real, if it is a response to a situation where I'm actually angry, or where there has been actual injustice, of course the response is very appropriate, and there is no need to take that blame on self. It is also very important to realize that there are two people, or how many ever people involved in the situation, and what were their contributions to the situation. Inner child is just helping me realize what are my emotions and needs. It's not me trying to take all the blame on myself. Does this answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much for the workshop as well. It was really helpful, and it was really it was structured in such a way that I was able to understand in the most simplest manner possible. I had just one thing to ask you. Can you just show me the slide of ideal parenting where everything was mentioned? I thought I missed some points there.
Sure. Okay, till then, I think Pragya has raised her hand. So if you have a question, Pragya, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to know your opinion on telling parents how they may have hurt your inner child and the problems that you're facing in your adult life because of that, and if you would hold them responsible.
I'm
Why
so
and why?
sorry, Pragya. I missed the starting of it. Can you repeat it? So sorry. Pragya, can you repeat the question? I missed some of it.
Yeah, I was asking your opinion on telling parents how they may have hurt your inner child and the problems that you're facing, how they're somehow responsible because of that in your adult life, because a lot of that connects to the childhood. And would you hold them responsible for it? Why or why not?
Okay, so my approach, if as a therapist you would ask my approach, I would say in the start, I would really, really just work with the client, because the client needs to be very strong to bring up that conversation with parents. Par- Parental conversation in any situation is so difficult. Any conflict with parents, I think, hurts so much, right? Because you are my primary caregiver, I expect unconditional love, support, everything, and a lot of times those are not met. So a conflict in the workplace or a conflict in a relationship is much easier to handle than a conflict in a parental situation. So the client really needs to be at a stage where they are open and they want to take that step. Because if that step is just coming from hurt, where I'm so hurt that I need to tell them, that might not really result in a favorable situation. So after being in a place where they are stable, where they know that that conversation is not going to affect them so much or not going to bring down all the progress that they have made, we might take that step. And even in that, it's also important how we approach that step. So we need to approach it in a way where I know that they also came from a place of they didn't know any better, it wasn't intentional in that way, or they have come from so much generational trauma themselves. So assertive communication is important. So where I use a lot of statements where I say I felt bad when this happened, rather than saying you did this to me so I felt bad. That is my approach as a therapist. Of course, everybody has a different approach. This is what I would have done. But yeah, does that answer your question?
That does, and it completely makes sense. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this webinar.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad. I think Rafi raised their hand first. So Rafi, go ahead.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you, Mindtribe. I have been following Mindtribe for the past most 3-4 years, and I'm on currently in therapy with Mindtribe also. So thanks a lot for the Mindtribe community. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, yes, you are. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Yeah. Fine. Okay. So this I just saw all your approaches. I have been practicing since last December. Last December, we had a workshop on a complex trauma. The therapist told me about this inner child parenting. So since last December only, I have been practicing this. I have been practicing everything, and ups and downs. Everything is there in my therapy, along with the mind trap therapist. Everything is going fine, but a lot of negative thoughts about circumstances, about family, my loved ones. These are the things I'm unable to deal with right now. Right now. So what can I do for that?
Of course. Rafi, I'm glad that you've been following us for such a long time and you have been coming for therapy regularly. I would say there are a lot of, like you said, negative thoughts about loved ones, and maybe is it related to what can happen to them? If you give me some context.
Yes, yes, yeah. Something happened. Something. Oh, there are real danger. Something. For example, I will tell you the scenario. Can I tell you the scenario?
Sure.
So yesterday, someone teased my wife, and she called 100. Not she told the neighbor to call 100. I am staying away in a hostel, working away from home. Okay, I'm in abroad now actually. So I'm afraid what will happen to her. Catastrophizing too many things in this situation. Too much catastrophizing this situation for the past 2 days.
Of course, of course. See, one, I think obviously it's something that must have affected you a lot, and I'm really sorry that happens, and I'm really sad that we live in a place where things like this always happen. So, and that is something that impacts us, especially when it's somebody that we're so close to and somebody that we love. What I will say is that while remembering all of that, also remembering in reality what are the things that I can do, what are things that can be done, what can be done by the other person also, because this is, as a person, if you feel responsible that, oh, I also have to be there, I have to be the one who is
Mm,
there, protects the family,
mm,
that is
mm,
also a lot of unrealistic
mm,
expectation on self when you're not even at home, right?
mm,
So being realistic in what can be done, what I can do, what are the resources available, once you know all these things, you will feel more comfortable that, okay, these are the resources available, I know these things can be done if things go bad or something happens, and these are the things that can be done. So I feel more secure. Other than that, if it is constant, I would say definitely bring it up with your therapist, because right now I can't really go into depth with it. Bring it up with your therapist, see how they feel, and together collaboratively what you can do.
fine, ma'am. Fine. Of course, a
Okay.
lot of positive things are happening around. The neighbors are supporting. My cousins are supporting. Everybody is there. Still, I'm catastrophizing. Why did she do that? Why did she call the 100? And she should have remained calm. All those stuff are going in my mind because it's going to affect my family in future. Or something. This catastrophizing thoughts are going on in spite of the neighbors and my relatives nearby are very supportive in the situation. This catastrophizing thoughts. Okay, ma'am. Fine. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, I think Shri and then Shubham.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, Shri, go ahead.
The session was good. So, I have one doubt in the case study that we discussed. That is, instead of when Ashish's wife complained that it is not in place, instead of complaining, if she had appreciated, let us say, if she had appreciated in the first go, thank you, it was so nice that you helped me, and so and so. What if he thinks that this is so small thing? Why is she appreciating me or acknowledging me for this? Doesn't his self doubt increase?
Um, I okay in the situation if she would have appreciated him, depending on how now this also depends a lot on how Ashish has grown up, right? If he's always mistrustful of compliments, then he would have thought, oh, why is she even saying that? Maybe it's not even sincere. Maybe it's not even genuine.
Mm, 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 mm,
It could happen. It could happen, but then realizing that is also something that you need to work on, right? Because a lot of times people will compliment you genuinely and
mm,
sincerely.
mm,
Why
mm,
am I
mm,
not
mm,
able to accept that compliment?
mm. Oh, okay, ma'am. Ma'am, can you go back to the slide self parenting?
Uh, just give me 1 second. I'll go back
Sure,
to all
ma'am.
the slides. I'll let me answer the questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank
Shubham,
you,
go
ma'am.
ahead, and then no problem. Shubham and then Kapil.
गुड आफ्टरनून मैम।
Good afternoon.
मैम मैं ये पूछना चाहता था, जैसे आपने तीन तरह के इनर चाइल्ड के बारे में बताया इसमें पूरी मीटिंग में। जैसे जो दो हैं, अबेंडेंट चाइल्ड है और दूसरा क्या था, सॉरी, अबेंडेंट चाइल्ड चाइल्ड था एक, और एक फियरफुल
जी
चाइल्ड
जी।
था। तो मैम ये दोनों तो आपस में इंटरकनेक्टेड हो गए ना। जैसे कई बार ऐसा होता है हमारे सिंगल पेरेंट चाइल्ड, किसी के पेरेंट चले जाते हैं बहुत ही कम एज में, तो उससे भी बच्चा फियरफुल चाइल्ड और अबेंडेंट चाइल्ड बन सकता है उस कारण से भी।
जी बिल्कुल। इज इट ओके इफ आई रिप्लाई इन इंग्लिश?
मैम मिक्स में बताइए, थोड़ा इंग्लिश इतनी अच्छी मेरे को समझ नहीं आती।
हाँ हाँ शिवम, तो जैसे आपने बोला कि इट कुड बी पॉसिबल इफ़ यू लूज़ योर पेरेंट, तो ऐसा हो सकता है कि फियरफुल एंड अबैंडन चाइल्ड हो जाए। जब मैं केयर गिवर की बात करती हूँ, मैं सिर्फ पेरेंट की बात नहीं कर रही हूँ। इट कुड बी एनी बडी दैट द चाइल्ड ग्रू अप विद। इट कुड
जी।
बी योर ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स, इट कुड बी योर अंकल, आंट, एनी पर्सन। सो अगर उनका रिएक्शन कैसा था बच्चे को लेकर, हाउ वॉज देयर पेरेंटिंग विद द चाइल्ड, दैट ऑल्सो इन्फ्लुएंसेस दैम।
यस मैम, क्योंकि मैम मैं मानता हूँ मतलब बहुत यंग एज में अगर आपका कोई पेरेंट चला जाए या दोनों ही पेरेंट्स ना हो तो बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है, क्योंकि जो गाइडेंस मिलती है प्रॉपर वो नहीं मिल पाती।
बिल्कुल, यस शिवम, थैंक यू फॉर दैट। ओके
थैंक यू
कपिल,
मैम।
योर क्वेश्चन।
Hello.
यस, हाय।
So, ma'am, as I scored 8 in that, so I just want to know कि मुझे दो चीज़ें लगती है। एक तो मैं ग्रजेस बहुत रखता हूँ कि किसी से if somebody unexpectedly कुछ होता है, somebody says something that remains in my mind and keep triggering all the time. Secondly, whatever I start very enthusiastically, and when I about to make some progress, maybe suppose a job. So I initially started. I'm at the verge of that. थोड़ा सा I'll work little bit more, so maybe I get promoted. So that time anxiety starts, and I back down. I might start change the job. I might change the total work itself. I might resign or start some self work. A lot of times I've done that. So I mean, I just hesitate to go to the next step, and I think this is not what I want to do. So if I take this step, I will stuck in this. So let me go to something what I really want to do. Then I'll choose something else. Then same thing will happen in that. Then I'll change. So
Yes, a lot of
use on
this.
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
I understand. A lot of this again can be coming out from where is this fear coming from? Why is it so hard for you to, stay in one place? What will happen? What is the worst case scenario? Maybe all of these doubts keep coming up and they make keep switching and changing. That could be one of the reasons. I would say, a lot of times in these situations, it is one good to first reevaluate what your goals are as a person, setting these goals for yourself. What are the long term goals, what are the short term goals, and then being consistent. I think we discussed that being consistent at least with the smaller goals, what is achievable, being consistent. And once you do that, once you provide some structure, maybe that will help. Also, I think, again, because I think this is something that is deep rooted, I can't really answer in the few minutes that I have with you. Coming for therapy, going to a session, really understanding what is happening with you will also be helpful.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ananya, go ahead.
I'm sorry to bother you again. Just a quick question. What was all that was Mr. Shubham was saying? It made me realize, like, I was also following my mother's actions and reactions to certain things that happen. And I just wanted to ask you, like, she was 3 when my maternal grandmother passed away, and was 7 when my maternal grandfather did. So, how to, like, what can I do as some basic things to help her, like, to like reconnect with her inner child self, and uh, like not like in the situations when she is triggered and she is not able to understand why is she getting triggered, or doing certain things that are not required or as in response in that situation. So how can I help her?
So, see, I would say this has a lot of complexities and layers because that is in the end your parent, right? So, with that, of course, helping her in the ways of getting in touch with her inner child would be connecting back to the things that she liked when she was a child, having hobbies. Maybe she didn't have the time and space to develop these things because there was so much going on at home. She lost two primary caregivers in a short span of time. Maybe there's a lot of pressure on her to do well or whatever it was. Now I don't really know, but you miss out on childlike activities that you could have done in that age because there was so much going on. So helping her do that now, doing things together, the both of you, which will make her feel like, oh, I can do this, is something that I share with my daughter, having those rituals and habits that you develop together. But also remembering, with parents, I have dealt with this, with my mother, where I felt like, oh, I can help her and how to stop the triggers and make her feel better. But is she in the place where she wants to do that? Doing all of
Like,
this, it's very important to remember that in the end they are the parent and you are the child. So not to put that pressure also on yourself, because it might not be as successful as you think it would be, right? She might not be very open to it. So seeing if she is, then maybe just helping her understand the concept, helping her be involved in it. If once you involve her, once you tell her these are the things, can it's something that we can talk about together, discuss. If she wants to, great. But if she doesn't, that is also something that should be acceptable.
it almost happens like yesterday only it happened, like we got some tickets for a play, and I was like trying to convince her to go with me and watch it, and she was like, yeah, you go, go with your dad and like that things. She never gets involved in anything, be it as simple as like going to the market for just some leisure fun. And she's like, I don't like these things, and I'm like, you have never done these things, so how can you decide that you like or not? Once she will try, she will know na. And that causes such a furious fight between us because she's unwilling to even try anything.
Hmm. Yeah, I know. And I really see how you come from a place of a lot of love and just wanting her to try. And you want them to experience these things. You want them to do it with you. You want to have those memories. But also maybe she comes from a place of where I've never done this. Why should I even do this? I don't want to indulge. So maybe starting very small. For you it could be the smallest thing, but for her even that could be a big thing to do, right? Even starting at home, just this one thing that we do together at home that we have never done. So at home it's still a safe environment where she doesn't have to step out, but it's still a new thing. So maybe something like that, maybe meeting her at a point where she's at least willing to start, and then slowly building up.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the time and being so humble and patient. and listening to every problem and answering so in a well structured manner. Thank you so
Thank
much for the
you.
workshop.
So sweet. Thank you. Okay,
Much gratitude.
everybody, we're done with time. We're actually over time. So I'm really grateful for everybody and everybody who stayed back, asked questions. The workshop will be uploaded on YouTube. So even if somebody has missed slides, which I know a lot of you have put in the chat box, you can always go back and refer to it there. So you will be able to see those slides, and we will be sending our links on the group, so use those links. Anybody who wants to book a session, do that. You also have the Mind Tribe website, and we have workshops every weekend, so please feel free to use them. Okay, thank you so much everybody. Have a great weekend ahead. Bye bye.